And afterwards it will be available on Lifestyle and Design Cluster's YouTube channel. Yeah. It will be possible to ask questions after each talk. You can write the questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and you will have open air time for speaking. Please keep your microphones muted while the event is running, so we don't have all this background noise. Okay. I'm just looking behind my back to see if the guests are coming. They will come soon, I suppose. Okay, but I will share my screen and take you through just a few intro slides to this event. As I said before, it's the first event of 3. The recycling project is a lifestyle and design cluster project. It's founded by Dansk Erhvervsfremmebestyrelse and runs through 2022. I just mute my mic because okay, can you hear what I'm saying? Yeah, okay, because so the guests in the room also can hear what's happening. I'd rather take out my headphones. Okay, but what I was saying was that the project is founded by Dansk Erhvervsfremmebestyrelse and run through 2022. This is the first of 3 kickoff events. The next event will be in August, and the last event will be in November. The purpose of this project is to gain knowledge about the opportunities and challenges within textile fiber-to-fiber recycling. And this is done with several partners from Denmark in the field of uniforms, workwear, and eco-fashion. The target of the project is that findings, insights, and knowledges collected during the project will be shared so other companies will be able to learn about possibilities and challenges in textile fiber-to-fiber recycling. But as I think we all know, fiber-to-fiber recycling can't stand alone in a circular system shift. Therefore, the project will also touch the pre-phases of fiber-to-fiber recycling, which is the user phase, repair phase, and the reuse phase. Because it creates most value to keep the product in its original state as long as possible. Changing the linear value chain to a more circular value chain relates to the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is partly about reducing waste. And the project also taps into the newly released EU Textile Strategy, which by many subjects highlights circularity. Let me see. Okay. Who are we? The academia partners is from the Royal Danish Academy via University College and Copenhagen School of Design and Technology. In the project group, we have Else Skjold, PhD and Associate Professor from the Royal Danish Academy. We have Paul Erik Jørgensen, which is a Senior Consultant, Research and Development from via University College. And I'm from Copenhagen School of Design and Technology and work as a Senior Lecturer in Sustainable Fashion Tech. But let's jump to what I think you all are here for today, to hear these 3 talks from our very interesting and inspiring speakers today. We have the first talk, which is about design for circularity, which is held by Else Skjold and Trine Skjødt, both from the Royal Danish Academy. Then secondly, we will have a talk about recycling technologies, held by Polymer Recycling and Gabriella from Lifestyle and Design Cluster. And the third talk is held by Natalia Papu-Caron, which will talk about circular textiles. And Natalia is a research analyst in circular textiles from Circular Economics in Amsterdam. Okay, speed talking while doing so many other stuff. So now I'm glad to give the word to Else and Trine. You're very welcome just to shortly introduce yourself more firmly than I have done. And I will stop share, so you will be able to share your screen with us. And hopefully this should work for you. Yes. Okay, I'll mute my mic, Trine and Else, and the word is yours.
Yes, and I hope everyone can hear me. I'm just trying to put this on full screen mode. Like this. Yes, hello. So welcome. So my name is, as presented, Else Skjold. I'm a researcher in design and sustainability here at the Royal Danish Academy, and also the head of the master program here. And I'm currently building up research environment. So my research assistant, Trine, is sitting next to me. And she's actually the one who is going to conduct much of the research that will take place in this recycling project. And if you should wonder why we start with this wonderful image, it is two sheep from the Faroe Islands, because we are going to work with Gudrun and Gudrun, quite renowned design company that made the sweater for the killing that many might know already. So they're kind of world famous, and now they're going into investigate design for circularity. So what I would like to start out with is just to frame what is going on here in Denmark, what we're looking into, and then Trine will take over and present what we are planning to do in our project. So first of all, it's no secret that the eyes are now beginning to turn and look at the fashion and textile sector, even if we have for many years been going kind of under radar in terms of legislation and regulation. Now things are really moving ahead, and here to your right hand you see the model for the EU Textile Strategy that was launched here the 30th of March. The Eco Design Directive from EU is going to include textiles when it's being launched here this year or next year. And also here in DK we see the first political investment in green transition work and circularity for textiles, which is this green partnership, the Innovation 4, which is funded by the government and runs through the Danish Innovation Fund. And all of these free initiatives are going to affect very deeply the way we are going to earn our money, basically, in this sector. So it's no longer a matter of choice or anything else like this. It's actually very, very necessary that as a fashion and textile company, you will have to go into investigating these circular business models, and rather sooner than later. And what is that then? What we are discussing a lot is that this model represents how we have been performing in you can see the normal fashion industry that is particularly linear, because it creates a lot of products that are trend and season based. So it's a lot about producing standardized new stuff. And what is going to happen now is that the income of the sector is going to come primarily from what is called the aftermarket, which is use, wash, repair, new services, second-hand sale, recycle, reuse, all sorts of things where you actually meet your product and your customer again. So it's kind of a completely reverse logic of the current business logic. So it's very necessary now that researchers and companies go together to explore what are actually the possibilities. This is also a matter of how we assess the impact of products and of companies, because if you see this measurement of wool, you can say that on the letters, the words in blue are what we currently measure, which is everything belonging to the normal, what comes before sale. So we measure on the impact of production, raw materials, processing, all of that. But we actually don't have data for the use phase where a material such as wool performs quite well. So this means that what is currently being assessed as performing well in terms of circularity and sustainability, that could really shift a lot when we are starting to build data. So it's a kind of a moving target. So we don't know how these impact measurements are going to look like, but what we do know is that it's very necessary to try to look at this model of cascading. So the orange parts, that is use, repair, and reuse, are the most vital ones to look into, because in terms of climate effects and in terms of also economical gain, it's actually the best points of entrance to the circular economy, whereas we should take as the last resort to recycle fiber to fiber. That's only when you have tried all the other elements. And this is not a new thing. We have been making money in our sector for thousands of years like this, but we have kind of forgotten it for 4 or 5 decades. So we need to reconfigure what actually to do. And one of the things that we will talk about is how design and crafts can help create new value of things we currently call waste, but we need now to see it as resources. So I will leave the word to Trine to tell a little bit more about the Gudrun and Gudrun project.
Yes, so these examples, as we just showed, is examples of here how craft in particular, when repairing a garment, can bring value to a garment that could have been fiber to fiber recycled, but here you don't need to take that step in order for it to actually become useful again. Another example is Polymer Recycling, a project I was working on in fall last year. But this is one of the last steps you would need to take. But again, an example of how to design and bring value to a material. For designing for recycling, there's different things that you can consider already in the design phase. So some of the parameters that you can look at is designing with white fibers, which make you able to re-dye the garment. It can be using natural fibers, since they're easier to fiber recycle. It can also be being very aware about the quality of the fibers that you use, since the recycled yarn or fabric never, well, it's always dependent on the quality that you put into the process. And then having pure materials, so monomaterials where it's not blended fibers. But you can say that these strategies are also a very simple way of looking at it. So I've tried to map other strategies that take a more holistic approach, where you're also able to include designing for longevity in this design phase as well. So this could, for example, be designing for disassembly, where it's possible to separate mixed materials. It could be the lining of a coat, for example, that would be easy to remove, or the separation of applications like buttons and zippers. It can also be designing with monomateriality, again, since this is a way that the garments or the products easily can fit into the existing recycling systems and technologies. And then it can be designing with waste, where you, instead of using virgin materials, look at other possibilities for design when designing your product. So it can be, for example, using yarn that is recycled, or using dead stock fabrics, or other examples as well. So for this project, we are partnering up with Gudrun and Gudrun, as Elsa also mentioned. And they're already actually doing a lot of things within these strategies. For example, due to the fact that they are hand knitting a lot of their garments, you could say that they're already designing for disassembly, since you're able to unravel the knitted pieces and reuse the yarn. They are also considering monomateriality, since a quite significant amount of their collection is based on 100% wool. And in a way, they are also designing with waste, because the whole brand is built on using wool from the Faroe Islands that was for many decades not used but discarded. But this is the last strategy here is actually what we will be working further with in this project. As Gudrun and Gudrun are already in a process of utilizing the waste that they produce within production in new ways. So what we will do in the next coming months is to map the material waste streams within Gudrun to identify the recycling potentials based on this strategy, and then to test some different innovation hotspots that we find. And it could be, for example, doing fiber to fiber recycling with the offcuts from their production of the merino wool collection, the one here in the middle, which is sewn garments. So they have a little bit of offcuts here that could be used. So I think that is what we have for now.
Yes, so I will stop sharing, and then I don't know, Lotte, if there are any questions or comments or.
There are not any questions yet, but we have time for some questions if there are any.
And people are also welcome to consider questions throughout the next lectures. We will not go anywhere until this event has finished. So if you have anything that comes up, please write it in the chat. So thank you so much for listening. Yes.
Thank you so much, Elsa and Trine. And then I will give the word to Polymer Recycling and Gabriella, which are going to talk about recycling technologies.
Thank you so much. Do I have to share my screen, or do you do it, Gabriella?
You will do it.
I'm already on it. Yes.
You're on it.
Oh, yes.
Unfortunately, it's partly made here in Danish.
Yes, that's the thing. I hope it's okay. We do it in Danish, or should we try?
If you can, the slides will be in Danish, but if you can have the talk in English, that would be the best. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Well, I'm gonna start off by saying that me and Paul Erik will play ball here, and he will present some of the slides, and I will present some of the slides. So it will be going a bit back and forth. So we will talk about recycling technologies and recycling plants in Europe. And the background, a bit of the background on this is that a couple of years ago in Lifestyle and Design Cluster, we did a mapping of recycling plants, mainly in the Nordic countries and in Europe, focusing on fiber-to-fiber recycling technologies for the fashion and the textile industry. What we would like to showcase some of the plants, recycling plants we found back then, and to shortly actually mention that there's definitely more out there, and it's something that we are working on right now to update this mapping, and a new version will come up, and we will tell you more about this in the end of the presentation. So here you have the overview of the recycling plants in Europe we identified back then. As you can see, there's a few in Finland and in Sweden, as well as in Holland, and one in the UK, and of course Italy in the Prado area, and also Spain. Yes.
But first of all, it's very important, and also what was mentioned by Else, that we have to avoid that we are coming to the stage where we have to fiber-to-fiber recycle it. Before, we have to see if it's possible at all to prolong the lifetime of the garment by redesign and so on. But at the end of the day, if we can't redesign the garment any further, we have to recycle, and the best way to do it is to recycle the textile, and to try to use this textile for different purposes, and also to see if it can be adapted to some redesign. If it's not possible any longer, of course, we have to look into the fiber recycling, and the first way to do it is in a mechanical way, where we then obtain fiber-to-fiber recycling without adding too many processes, and also to avoid to use too much energy to do it. But if it's not possible to do it in this way, we have to look into the chemical recycling, and there is different possibilities. In fact, we can recycle down to the molecules. Of course, it's a long way to go, and it's more difficult, and more energy consumption is involved in to do that. But if we go back to the molecules, or even also to monomers, it's possible to rebuild all kind of polymers, and to obtain exactly the same quality as if it was a virgin material. But before coming so far, it's very important also to mention, and that's not all the facilities we have been looking into, which are fully integrated. That means some of them, they are only looking into the chemical part of the recycling. And before coming there, we need different processes to sort. First of all, the materials in different material types. But also if it's going into mechanical recycling, it's very important also to look into the different color shades to have a homogeneous yarn after the recycling. But it's also a long process to come here, because all kind of garments is equipped with different accessories, and of course we have to remove all this not textile parts from the garments before we can go further. And then it's cut, and it's going through different cleaning processes before it's going to the threading, where we end up with very fine fiber, which can be either going into the mechanical recycling process, or it can even also go into the chemical recycling process.
Yes. And a bit about the mechanical process, as you see, when as Polymer said, when it has been collected and sorted, the textiles and the post-consumer clothing goes into the conveyor belt, where they begin the opening process of the fibers, and here it's where the shredding happens. And what they do, since the shredders cut the fibers maybe too short, or at least too short to be able to become new fibers without adding any virgin fibers. That's not possible, because the fibers won't be strong enough. They always in the mechanical process will add virgin fibers, and that the percentage of that depends on how well the machines, the shredders and so on are, the settings on them are. So it depends very much on that. And another important thing to say about the mechanical process is that they don't need to re-dye, because they color sort the waste. So in the end, what you put in is what you get out if it's color sorted. And some of the recycling plants or companies working with the mechanical process, you see some of them here, as Refill Lab in Italy, Pure Waste in Finland, Recover in Spain. That also has they have a strong collaboration with, for example, Machins in Holland. They've had that for years. Then there's Walcott in Holland, and with facilities in recycling facilities in Morocco. And Reverso is as well in located in Prado, working with recycling of wool, and so on. And there's more, and this is just some of them, and you can deep dive into the actual mapping if you would like to know more. I just chose one of the examples to showcase, and that's Refill Lab. And the reason why I chose this one is because it's quite inspiring how they still have the whole textile value chain located in the Prado area in Italy. So they all the steps, the collection, the sorting, the spinning, the shredding, the spinning, and all that happens within few kilometers. So that's quite impressive and inspiring. And they work with the mechanical process, and this is what Prado is known for actually for centuries, working with mechanically recycling mainly wool. And what Refill Lab does is that they collect from Southern Europe and the US, and they've also started a take-back system in Italy, as far as I know. And they recycle that and add a few percentages of virgin fibers, not that much as far as if they have said. And currently it's about 500 tons. Sorry, it's 100 tons, but in the near future they would like to increase that to 500 tons, which is not a lot, obviously, but it's also it's quite a startup. I think it's probably 3 years old or something like that. So it's not such an old brand.
Yes, the next possibility hereafter, we have been talking about the mechanical recycling, is the thermochemical recycling. That's an old technology, in fact, because it has been used very much into the polyester business, but not for post-consumer waste and so on. It has always been undyed fibers, undyed polyester fibers, which has been taken into the process again and have been made new flakes out of it, and afterwards it has been melt spun as normal polyester. And this technology is also well known from the bottle chips coming from the water bottles and Coke bottles and so on. And that's what is the common technology used today when you are looking into to recycle the polyester, and the quality which can be obtained by doing this in this process is nearly on the level on virgin material. You won't reach the virgin material 100% because you will always lose something in the recycling process, but it's nearly up to that. The problem here is it's not suitable, and it can't be used for post-consumer frictions because all the dye stuffs and also different finishes and so on can't be absorbed in this kind of process. And then at the end here, we have the last possibilities is the chemical recycling, and there is different ways to do it depending on if it's a cellulosic material or a polyester, for instance. But the main task here is, of course, is to bring the material back to a stage where it can be respun into to new yarns, which have nearly the same properties and also all the virgin materials properties. The technologies is not so far until now. It still needs more development, and that means all what we see until now here on the market is still in the labs. Except of the cellulosic parts, which Gabriella also mentioned, there's more facilities or more plants placed in Sweden and in Finland, which are scaling up for the moment here, but still they have a limited capacity. So it's not big quantities they can deliver or they can process for the moment. Yeah, here is just here you just have the chemical process again, which are then in two steps here. Either you can use it for the polyester, where you bring back the polymer into smaller pieces, and then it can again go into the normal virgin process, and fiber can be made and yarn can be made out of the fibers. When we look into the cotton part or the cellulosic part here, there is also different ways to do it, and either it can be in a dissolution process or it can be in a depolymerization process, depend on. And if you look into the different plants which are scaling up right now here, each of them are using different technologies, and there's some benefit from from some of them, but there's also economically or a business perspective in each of the technologies. So it's difficult to say right now here which are the best one and which will be the technology which will take off in the near future.
Yes. And here you have a selection of some of the recycling plants focused exactly on the chemical recycling process that Polymer just presented. And as you see, there's Iron Cell from that is Aalto University that works behind it. There's Saxel in Holland, that is the Saxion University in Holland working with it. And most of them are focused on recycling the cellulosic part. But for example, Warner Guerin in the UK, they also work with the polyester content. And Econil is the nylon, for example. They work with from the fish nets, and so on. And I've chosen one of the very, let's call it, famous recycling plants, Renewcell, that has the private label under them that is called Circulose, and they have been working on the development for 10 years. They can work with either production waste or post-consumer waste, but it needs to be at least 95% content of cellulose fibers. And this is because the way their process works is not focused on, as we saw before with the polycotton blends, it's focused on the right side where you were focused on the cellulose. The chemicals they use, they are recycled due to a high price, definitely. So this is a closed loop, and the end product they produce is these cellulosic sheets, as you would could say. These are the sheets they send to the spinners and so on. For example, Birla, the Indian cellulose producer, they work a lot with them, and they are able to transform these sheets to fibers and yarns and so on. Some of the very first collaborations they did was, of course, with H&M, because they are one of the investors, the big investors in Renewcell. And also last year, the brand Object from Bestseller had their first garments made with Circulose fabrics. And currently they are finishing off finishing up their new factory that will be able to take 120,000 tons by 2022, in the autumn of 2022. And again, it's not big amounts, as you see. That's why Polymer also said that it's still not super scalable or super commercial. And just to summarize, the mechanical recycling is commercial, but there's still limited capacities within how much they can handle. The thermomechanical recycling, it exists, but it's mainly focused on PET bottles. And then the chemical recycling, as we said, is still under development. There's several recycling plants working with this process, mainly focused on the cellulose part, cellulose fibers. And we see this developing, I would say, and you can, I don't know if you would agree, Polymer, 5 to 10 years that it could, it could need that those years to become commercial. Yeah. And the last thing I would like to say is that the the mapping we presented here, it's the first version of it, and the second version we are working, Polymer and I and Annette Werner from the Technological Institute, we are working on it, updating it with almost 20 more recycling plants, and updating also the status of the ones that are already included, and it will be published in 2022 August. So you can look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Polymer and Gabriella. If you unshare your screen. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if there's any questions from the audience. Not right now. Maybe you could talk a little. We talked. I have, as you know, 2 guests. It's a quite cozy event at my table. But maybe you could talk a little bit more into what is the main challenges within this recycling perspective. Why isn't it scaled yet?
Yeah, one of them is, of course, that we are adding into the system a very complex material, because a lot of what we are adding into is either mixed or dyed with different colors, of course. And if we are looking into the mechanical part, it's a lot of sorting and so on to obtain a homogeneous color after the mechanical recycling, which can be used again. And then, of course, on all recycling, you have a loss of materials, and that means you have to add some virgin materials, either in form of long fibers, long cotton fibers, for instance, to obtain a spinnable yarn afterwards, which also have the properties afterwards, which can go into a garment which have a long lifetime. So there's different aspects which has to be solved, and I'm strongly. I believe, of course, that can be solved, but that can only be solved when we work together. That means we have to design not so complex products which can go into the process, because the process can't solve itself. We have to help in the design process to make more simple products, so to say, which are easier to recycle afterwards at the end of the day. But in the beginning, of course, we have to look into making the best possible products which can last very, very long before coming to the end of the day where it has to be recycled. Because the recycling process will always consume energy and resources. So we have to see if we can prolong the lifetime as long as possible for all of our textile products.
Thank you, Polymer. I just need to ask you one more question, because you say less complex products, more simple. Can you? What exactly do you mean about that?
Yeah, what I mean with that is, for instance, first of all, the sorting process need also to be optimized so that we can sort out more different materials, because we always have a different mix. For instance, polycotton blends that's with different content of cotton, but also we are adding a lot of dyestuffs, we are adding a lot of additives, which in the chemical recycling will give some problems. Because, for instance, if we have a water repellent surface, it can give or cause some problems afterwards. And it's very difficult to find out which kind of chemical do we need. So we need more, more transparency to be sure what's in fact the content of each of the products.
Okay, thank you so much for telling me more about that, and of course the rest of the audience. I think we will thank you to you, Polymer and Gabriella, and then we have the last speaker for today's event, Natalia Papu-Caron, research analyst in circular textile from Circular Economic in Amsterdam. Are you with us, Natalia?
Yes, here, Lotte.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
I will ask you to share your screen.
Yes. let me,
Yes.
can you see the screen correctly?
We can see
Yeah.
your screen, perfect. And then I will give the word to you. Please begin to introduce yourself a little bit more deeply than I have, and then the word is yours.
Yes, great. So hi, I'm Natalia. I work as a researcher at Circular Economy for 3.5 years now. I have a background in textile design and in supply chain management. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here to listen to the project kickoff and also to share some of our experience and work at Circular Economy with an outlook on the landscape for end of use of textiles, mostly focusing on post-consumer textiles, and trying to not repeat myself with what was already mentioned before by the other speakers. I'll try to keep the focus on the prior steps to recycling, such as textile collection and textile sorting. Yeah, so Circular Economy, we are a not-for-profit impact organization. We're based in Amsterdam, and we work globally with businesses, cities, and also at national level to help governments and businesses put circular economy into action. So kind of delivering on the practical implementation of it. And I first wanted to share, just from a broader perspective, in 2018 with the Circular Economy team, we developed kind of a methodology to assess how circular we are as a planet. And that is called the Circularity Gap Reporting Initiative. And we currently also do those assessments at a national level. So basically, we just released, for example, the results for Sweden. We are basically trying to show what is the material footprint behind satisfying our societal needs and how does it flow through the economy. And basically what that shows us is that today we are using over 100 billion tons of resources every year to meet our needs. And that the level of consumption, I think, as was said before, in the last 5 decades has triplicated. So we're really also emitting 59.1 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions, and really these figures continue to rise exponentially. We see that only 8.6% of what we extract from our earth and use within our economy is circulated back into it. So that's a small percentage of all of the resources we use that is circular. So basically, what we say is that this take-make-waste pattern is really impossible to maintain within the Earth's limited resources. And we really need to rethink and redesign the systems, but also redefine kind of the measure for success more broadly than speaking to economic growth. What that means for the circular economy is basically we need to set a system whereby we design out waste and pollution, we keep products and materials in use for as long as possible, and we regenerate our natural systems. And basically within the context of the textile industry, this would mean a system where products and materials are kept in use for as long as possible and with a higher value, something that was already mentioned before. And that these products are consistently made, used, collected, and reintroduced into the supply chain at their end of use as raw materials. And speaking to what Else mentioned before as well, this really speaks to the variety of secondary processing activities and jobs and economic inputs that can come from reprocessing those materials, whether it's within repair, reusing, remanufacturing, or recycling. So really our approach towards creating, just contributing to this system, we say it's always twofold. We have like a large textile waste mountain in front of us, which is existent, and we all know about it. So on one hand, we believe that there is a need to increase capacity of industry and education to really assess and adopt circular strategy, circular design, and innovation, and contribute to preventing this mountain from building further. But also, on the other hand, we recognize there is already a massive amount of textile waste out there. So really, there's a need to build the data, the technology, and the infrastructure that is needed to valorize this textile at their end of use in order for them to not become waste in the end. And for us, this means working alongside kind of collectors and sorters for them to find increased value and opportunity for the textiles that cannot be reused in their current state. And also that recyclers should have increased access to high quality feedstocks for their processes, and that really all relevant stakeholders, so collectors, sorters, recyclers, but also remanufacturers, brands, retailers, they have an increased insight into what textile waste streams are out there and the challenges that there are processing. And we look at the end of use of the textiles supply chain more or less as we visualize it in this diagram. So the numbers here are based on research that we did in Northwest Europe as part of the FiberSort Interreg project. So they don't include Denmark, but I'll focus on Denmark in just a minute after. Basically, what we see is that end of use starts by consumers disposing of their textiles, and an average of 70% of those home textiles and garments that are disposed by consumers are actually lost to incineration or landfill together with general household waste. And that means that these textiles immediately lose their value because you can find them in a mixed waste stream where there is no possibility to recover them. From the 30% that is separately collected by municipalities, charities, or even brands today, in Northwest Europe, around 64% of that is deemed of enough quality to be considered rewearable. So this means it will be sold in the second-hand market, either locally or globally, but mostly globally. So to countries outside Northwest Europe in this case. However, not all of these textiles that are deemed rewearable actually get sold on this market. So again, many of them are lost back into landfill or incineration, or they end up in lower value uses, such as, for example, I don't know, insulation material. From the other part, so the part that is deemed non-rewearable, this sometimes are called recyclables, but actually not all are recyclable. So options to revalorize these textiles are really quite few at the moment. As was said before, there are a lot of innovations that are not at scale yet. And there is this high level estimate around that less than 1% is recycled into new textiles. There is no updated calculation there, but we know there's a trend moving in that way. It just hasn't shown that much growth or scaling yet. So the majority of these textiles is still ending up being incinerated or used for lower value applications such as wipers, insulation, filling material for the automotive, the furniture industry, and so on. And what the picture shows is that we still end up with a huge kind of textile mountain. If we look at the Danish numbers, or what studies say about the Danish potential, there was a study across Danish municipalities in 2018 that looked into the potential of the textile material lost in general household waste. And basically, if you look at the potential for fiber-to-fiber recycling, more than 60% of it has that potential towards the future, and already 26% of it was deemed recyclable today. So those are a lot of resources that today we're losing out on, and we could recirculate back in the supply chain. When you look at collection and sorting, in terms of collection, Danish numbers are slightly higher, so a bit more than 40% is collected separately. And if you look at rewearable textiles sold on the second-hand market, the number is closer to 70%, although there's a lot of original export, which is basically unsorted or very light sorted garments, many of which end up in another country still without a purpose for reuse. So we just looked at the numbers for Northwest Europe and for Denmark. If we try to give a kind of more of a global estimate of this breakdown, we're looking more at a 50% of rewearable garments, 40% of non-rewearables, and 10% of waste. And from the perspective of collector and textile sorter, this is still quite a healthy balance, because rewearables have the most value and are the ones that generate most profit in second-hand market. And non-rewearable fractions are today far less valuable. They have limited end markets, and they even often generate a cost for textile collectors and sorters. But actually the landscape is changing, and all of the collectors and sorters we speak to say agree to the same trend, and that is that actually the non-rewearable fractions are growing quite fast, and this is driven by a combination of causes: increased overall consumption per person, a decrease in how long we use our clothes, so we're really keeping them for a lot less long, a decrease in the overall quality of the textiles in general, and also municipal and charity collection are starting to see also less quality goods, because brands and retailers are also starting to collect their own products, and that means that those are not entering the municipal flow of textiles, so that also complicates the balance. So basically, what we need to do is try to find ways to capture the value of these textiles in the system, and really try to see which of these textiles and what quantity of these textiles can be driven into fiber-to-fiber recycling. And this is tricky because of many challenges. Recyclability is based on a very large number of factors. Polymer said it quite well. It's about the fiber type, the blended or pure of the material. It's also about the garment construction or the textile, the way it's constructed, the trims or the hardware it has that needs to be removed. So really, it's a combination of challenges, but there are, for example, that garments that contain elastane make it really hard for both mechanical and chemical recycling. And according to the research that we saw through the Fibersor project, 1 in 5 items were containing elastane. So that's quite a high percentage of garments that pose the same challenge. So in order to valorize these textiles, we need to further understand what they consist of. And basically today, sorting facilities work on sorting based on quality and market. So basically, sorters look at a very large variety of grades of different buckets of fractions. Sometimes it's close to 200, but they look at quality criteria and market. So is it in good shape, and how, where would I be able to sell it, in what country, what type of market? And they sort the species every 3 seconds maybe. So that's also a large know-how and an amazing expertise that they have. So at this really very high speed, they sort and they find the highest and lowest value items, and the lowest value items go into the non-rewearable fraction. But when you get to the non-rewearable fraction, you really need to know the fiber composition in order to assess its recyclability. You could check an item's label and gain insights into the composition of it, but that presents several challenges. Firstly, it's very time consuming, and also accuracy of labels is not a given thing. So this is where automated and semi-automated sorting technologies come into play, and I wanted to share just some examples of it. Well, we have different types of technologies, and I wanted to focus on optical scanning technologies. Basically, it's near infrared of optical scanning. Like, for example, in the video, you can see the fiber sort technology. There's also similar technological development happening with the Siptex facility in Sweden as well. Basically, what does it allow you to do? It allows you to sort clothing by its fiber composition and color at a rate of more or less 900 kilograms of textiles per hour. So that's much faster than manual sorting. And basically, this is a video showing how the machine works in the facility that is located in the north of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So the textiles are placed in the conveyor belt, and then based on the scan, there is an indication of which bucket they should fall into, and that is driven by air jet technology. There are also other type of devices that allow for this same type of technology, and this is when we talk about semi-automated sorting. For example, through handheld scanners. So here we have Matoha on one hand, and we also have Nirone textile scanners. They have been working, these are companies and businesses that have been working with other type of waste streams such as plastics, and in the latest years, they have been developing a library also to scan textiles. And basically, I wanted to show just an insight to another research that we did before finishing, and it's that if the case of automated sorting is still not quite straightforward for you yet. In 2020, we conducted a manual label check of over 10,000 garments, post-consumer garments, and to start with, 30% of those labels were not legible. So basically, there was no way of telling through the label what their composition was. And what we did was cross-check this manual label sorting with automatic sorting scans and analyze the difference in outcomes. So what it showed is that 41% of the analyzed labels were not accurate. And this happened for pure materials as well, but this was mostly the case with material blends. And mostly with polycotton blends and the indication of presence of cotton in relation to larger presence of cotton in relation to the presence of polyester. Also, the presence itself of the label can pose challenge for fiber-to-fiber recycling. Firstly, because they might be from a different composition. So labels mostly consist of synthetic materials. And if the recycler's feedstock is pure wool or pure cotton, then that poses a challenge, and the removal of labels, it can be done manually. So that really increases the price of the output. And also, just in terms of mechanical recycling, and there is an issue with the color pollution of labels, which are usually white on different colored garments. As we saw before, there is no. Usually, they try to not re-dye the outcome, the yarn that comes as an outcome of the mechanical recycling process. So that's also a tricky step. But basically what I want to say is that there are still a lot of barriers that inhibit the full potential of circular textiles. There is really action needed in the investment and the development of technologies and jobs in the circular space, but also in driving kind of behavioral and mindset shifts towards recyclability and recycled content. And we see these are urgent with, as mentioned before, the Circular Economy Action Plan, the Textile Strategy coming out, and the Waste Directive that by 2025 all member states from the European Union need to have separate collection of used textiles. So there is really an urgency, and there is still quite some barriers to tackle. So I am happy to hear, for example, of this project that is tackling collaboration in this regard, because what we usually say in our team is that the designer really needs to marry the garbage man, or at least, start doing business together. And if we know that nearly 60 or 70% of those post-consumer textiles are still lost within general household waste, we have there a job and an opportunity to work on that. So there's a big kind of disconnect between the start and the end of the value chain, and there are many opportunities to develop this further. So I wanted to just share a bit of insight into this part of the value chain, and happy to hear about the development also of the project, and what will come in regards to pilots and so on. So thanks a lot for the invitation, and just let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Natalia. It was very exciting to hear, and it was, I think, the perfect final slide with the designer have to marry the garbage man. It really collects what we have talked about of the presentations today. So thank you for that. I can see there is a question from Gabriella.
Yes, I have two actually. Thank you for the presentation, Natalia. Really nice to have the overview of what you work at the Circular Economy. The project you showed about the accurate or not. What did you use to? Maybe you mentioned it and I didn't hear it. But what did you use to identify the material content? Was it the fiber sort, the near technology, or was it one of the hand scanners?
Yeah, thanks for that, Gabriel. We used for that project we used the fiber sort technology, and what we did was also measured against the degree of accuracy of the technology itself. So we had done previously chemical testing on batches of post-consumer textiles that had been sorted by the fiber sort, and that gave us an indication on for each material, so for cotton, how accurate is the actual technology and so on. So the results of that cross-check are also balanced against the accuracy of the technology itself.
And the fiber sort, the sorting, now I forgot the word, but who runs it today? Is it because it was a Interact project, right? So how is the after life of that, or what to say?
Yeah, so the demo facility is located within a sorter that operates it in the north of Amsterdam. They're called Wieland Textiles. And the technology is still in the IP of the technology owners that are Balban Baling Systems, which are the yeah, the ones that develop the library behind it and also the machinery itself.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, great.
Is there any more questions for Natalia? Okay, then I think I have time for one question. What in your perspective, Natalia, what is needed to make this shift to a circular shift, and we will be able to recycle much more of all the textile waste in the world? I know it's a tricky question, but and you have touch points in your presentation, but what would be the dream scenario?
Well, I think, yeah, it's a question with not one specific answer to it, or like multiple dimensions to tackle in order to make this shift happen. So I would say, yeah, Polar touched upon it before. There's like a technical component to making this happen, just linking the design processes better to the recycling possibilities or potential possibilities of the technology themselves. Then I also think there's a big piece in market demand and an uptake of this materials and of the progress of the materials. I think also because you need the market, the brands and retailers to commit to a quality now that has an expectation to improve in the future, but you still need that commitment today, or so it's tricky to kind of establish that commitment without the kind of the output as good as you want it in the coming 5 years. So a bit of that, the balance between the uptake and the technical development. I think that's also an interesting point.
Thank you so much for trying to ask my question. But thank you, Natalia. Natalia was the last speaker of the event. And just before we say goodbye, I'll just shortly, okay, we are here. Just if you would like to get in touch or have more information about lifestyle and design cluster projects, you can visit the website you see at your right. And if you would like to hear more about the recycling project, or if you maybe are interested in joining the project, you can contact me and I will guide you to whom you should talk to in the project group. And for the end, please remember to join us at the event in August, the 30th. The agenda is still secret, but we hope to see you then. So thank you to all of you. Thank you very much to our speakers today. I really enjoyed your talks. So thank you so much for joining us today, and goodbye and have a nice evening to all of you.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you very much to all of you. Have a nice evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.